If you don't know what to look out for, products like this one right here can destroy your Amazon business. And if you're not sure why, in today's video, we're gonna be breaking down how you can avoid IP complaints for your Amazon business. So I've got a bunch of example listings picked out with sample patterns that you'll see all over the place on Amazon, so you can be on the lookout and avoid IP complaints for your business. But if you're brand new to the channel, my name is Warner Fields from Fields of Profit. I'm a full-time 7-figure Amazon seller, and I'm super excited to share today's video with you guys because a lot of Amazon seller content is not focused around the nitty-gritty topics like this that you need to know to be very well equipped to crush it. So before we jump into the computer, if you guys are looking for even more free resources to learn how to sell on Amazon, so give me a link directly beneath me for our completely free Amazon seller Discord community. There are 45,000 people in there showing a ton of free information. Would love to see you in there, but let's go ahead and jump into the video. So like I said in the beginning, I've got several example products that I want to go ahead and break down for us, and I'll show you some things to look out for as you're sourcing products. So always be on the lookout for these simple things. So the first thing we're going to look at pretty much any item that you want to source is the Keep It chart. This is 20 bucks a month. You need it if you're going to be an Amazon seller, same as SellerAmp, 20 bucks a month, and you need it as an Amazon seller. So right over here, we can see the pattern that we're looking for here. So on this item, we can see that, in January, there was one seller on it. If we're looking down here at this new seller graph down here, as we are kind of going throughout time, we can see this kind of inching its way up, and it got all the way up to having about 14 sellers on this listing until, a little bit ago, we had a huge decrease in the number of sellers on this listing. So you can see it went from 14 sellers all the way down to 6 sellers in the matter of moments. And so sometimes you'll see the seller count on an item decrease very, very quickly. But in this case, there was no real reason for this number of sellers to get kicked off this listing all at once. And so what this tells me is that it is a private label product, or it's going to at least be a controlled product that gives out IP complaints. So you can see how it went from 14 to 6 down there in an instant. Sometimes you'll be able to see sales be very quick on a listing where it goes, 14, 13, 12, and so on, all the way down to 6. That's not necessarily an IP complaint. But another thing that is kind of a red flag about this product too is the fact that the sales rank didn't really move much. And you can also see on Keepa, this orange up here at the top shows you the buy box. So this shows you the seller that's making sales over time, which when we see that this orange line is pretty consistently going to MSIN here, and we can see that nothing changed when this seller count decreased right here. No one else was starting to make sales for it to make sense for that to be the reason why so many people disappeared all at once. This is a telltale sign of an IP complaint, is this many people getting kicked off all at once. So this is like the easiest thing you'll be able to look out for on these different items. And some of the things we'll talk about in today's video, if you ever see a huge cliff in the number of sellers on an item like this, it's almost always going to be a good idea to avoid the product. But let's go ahead and break down some of these other red flags for you to look at as well. So I actually pulled up an example of kind of another example of when they kick a bunch of sellers off the listing, just to show you what I'm talking about, kind of reinforce the point. So you can see back, in January, there was 13 sellers and it went all the way back down to 5. So for whatever reason on this listing, it doesn't seem like they've given out many more IP complaints, even though you can see that this product is sold by MSIN over here on SellerAmp. And as you're mousing over the Keep It chart, you can see that MSIN is the seller name on a lot of this. You can see it on the buy box stats right there. And so that tells me again that this is probably a controlled product of some kind because the brand is also on it. And when we zoom out, we can see this classic pattern back here in the past where they kicked off a bunch of new sellers. So always be on the lookout for that pattern right there where they're kicking a bunch of new sellers off. Same story right here, right? So they go from 9 sellers all the way down to 1 seller out of nowhere. There was nothing that really changed. No one started to make sales when this happened. And so that is a classic kind of an IP complaint. The next thing you guys want to be on the lookout for to avoid these IP complaints is this next Keep It pattern right here. So if you ever see an item where there's been consistently only 1 seller on the listing, it's not always going to mean that it's an IP complaining brand, but it very often means that there is some kind of exclusive contract going on, something that you just don't want to step on the toes of. And so in this case, I see consistently only 1 seller on this listing for the last, over a year in this case. We can zoom way out. It's always only been 1 seller. So even if you were to find this product for, 10 bucks at walmart.com or something like that, it's probably be a little bit ill-advised for you to go and sell this product here. Another thing that's kind of a major red flag about this particular product, some of the other ones we looked at as well, is that it's an as seen on TV product. So if you guys ever see as seen on TV products, they're notorious IP complainers. So I also bring that up as something to be on the lookout for, especially if you guys are doing any in-store scanning, something like that. You're going to come across some of those as seen on TV products. So always be very careful. Always check out the new offer count down here. We can see that it's consistently only 1 seller on the listing. And another thing that is kind of something to be on the lookout for here is that this item is verified by transparency codes. And so what this means is all of the items that, in this case, Riddix is making that they know are going to end up on Amazon, the supplier themselves is going to end up having these transparency codes to put on these products. Like the brand is going to put them there. And so if you buy this from, a Walmart Walmart.com or you buy it on the clearance aisle at Walmart, it's probably not going to have a transparency code because they're not going to be expecting that product to have been, authorized to sell on Amazon. So that's another thing to be on the lookout for. If you ever see that the item is verified by transparency codes, unless you're buying direct from the brand or direct from a distributor that you can clarify that with, it's not going to be super common that you're going to be able to find the transparency codes on those individual items. It's basically just like an anti-counterfeiting measure. And honestly, it's kind of weird to see it on a product that is this slow of a seller. Typically you see it on super fast selling products. So it's weird to see it on, 50,000 BSR here, but can definitely see the case, see why it might be needed on here if they don't want any unauthorized sellers on this listing, right? So this next thing you want to be on the lookout for here is whenever the product brand name matches the seller name. This is another classic, super easy thing to be on the lookout for on these listings that trips up a lot of Amazon sellers. And so right here, drop stop is on the brand and then drop stop is the seller on the listing. Another thing we can look out for here is that same keeper pattern where it's a super flat price line. Anytime you see a super flat price line, it tells me that there's either an MAP policy, so a minimum advertised price policy on this item, or it's going to be somewhat controlled. The brand's going to be controlling the sales, something like that, right? Both of which typically are not going to be the best arbitrageable items if they have a MAP policy or if the brand's kind of controlling sales. So we can go even zoom out to the year, zoom out to all time. And yeah, the only seller that's pretty much ever been selling this product is this Drop Stop LLC right here. That is the same name as the creator here. And I think I even remember this Shark Tank episode here, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, brand name matching the seller name is always kind of a red flag to be on the lookout for. So this is where it gets a little bit trickier, I would say. So right here, we've got this product right here. It's Thorn Nutrition right here. So something that I would also suggest for you guys is to, especially if you're a newer seller, to get something like IP alert right here. So that's this red siren. It's warning me that, Thorn Research is a brand that has been, a notorious IP complainer. They've given IP complaints to other sellers. And this kind of siren here is warning me that, hey, other Amazon sellers have ran into issues with this brand. So if you guys are new to Amazon, especially don't know what to look out for on these listings, you can get IP alerts, a one-time fee, so no recurring charges, anything like that. And if you guys use FOP30, when you go check it out, there'll be a link down below as well. You get $30 off. So in this case, we could completely ignore a lot of the analysis that we might have to do on this listing if you just kind of have IP alert there. Again, one-time fee, so nothing recurring, which I really like about the tool there. But yeah, let me just show you the other things about this listing that kind of stick out beyond just that IP alert kind of saying, hey, you should avoid this listing, right? And so tools like IP alert are not always going to be flawless, right? So we still need to be able to at least check out the data, especially for cases where IP alert says that there's complaints, but there isn't actually. That's something you want to be on the lookout for. And I've got an example of one of those products, and it's going to be a product that a lot of beginners would avoid because of the IP complaint kind of alert showing up there, right? But let's check out this one first. So we can see again, a super flat price line. Let me even kind of simplify this for us. And as we mouse over the price chart right here, we can see that it's been held at $30 by Pattern. Pattern is maybe the biggest seller on Amazon. I'm not exactly sure where they're ranking right now, but one of the biggest sellers on Amazon. So if you ever see them on a listing, that's another kind of red flag. It's funny that they're so big as an Amazon seller that seeing them on a listing is almost a red flag. But the other thing that worries me about this listing is when we go to data buy box statistics, we can see that they've made 97% of the sales on this listing. So even if you were able to hop on this listing and not get an IP complaint, not get kicked off the listing, even then this Pattern seller is still going to be taking the majority of the sales on a listing. I don't see any too crazy like cliffs in the seller count here either, but a lot of times these brands that are like heavily policing these listings, we don't see those cliffs because they're on top of things, and you typically would only get that cliff if the brand doesn't pay attention to it. Sellers build up over a couple weeks and then they get kicked off. We can also see, something like this, right? Same brand, Thorn Molecules. We can see that basically the only two people that are making sales here are Pattern and then this other company that has 71,000 feedback. So again, even if you wouldn't necessarily get an IP complaint, you're not probably going to be able to make sales on this listing. So always be on the lookout for the buy box rotation being very hogged by one particular seller. It often means there's some kind of exclusive arrangement, or it's just going to mean that you're not going to be able to make sales, both of which you don't really want to see, right? So when you guys are using IP alert or kind of a tool similar to it, it's not always going to be correct, right? So I want to show you an example of a product where you might be able to make money where other people might give up, right? So obviously this is selling 4 times a month, so it's probably not the product you want to buy, but the keeper pattern is what you want to be on the lookout for, right? So IP alert is flagging this brand as something that is, a potential IP complainer here. But as we mouse out over to kind of the all-time view here, especially, recently here, there's not really been any major cliffs in the number of new sellers. No one's been really getting kicked off. So you can see right here, we had a pretty quick seller decrease, but this isn't necessarily an IP complaint, right? Because we see it go from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 and so on. And so the difference between this item right here is I can see, oh, they probably just made sales, or maybe they placed a removal order. I can also see as we're mousing over this chart here, you see how the buy box changes between different sellers. So here it went to like Main Street, here it went to Cubs and Pups. So it goes to, all these different sellers here, which makes sense because the sellers are decreasing. The other one, the sellers were decreasing, right? Something like this, we could see the sellers were decreasing, but no one else is getting a buy box. So that tells me that It's not necessarily going to be sales. It's just going to be people getting kicked off. This one looks like sales, and it's not necessarily just people getting kicked off. Even though the IP alert says it might be an IP complainer, always go in and look at those other things you kind of broke down there, right? So is the brand selling on it? Is there a big cliff in the seller count? Is there an exclusive arrangement of some kind? If you don't see any of those red flags, I also think it's a good idea to just kind of grab this brand name here, this Aqua Spa, and then you just go ahead and throw it into, Amazon up here, right? So you're just looking through some of these other products and seeing, are some of these other products sold by Aqua Spa? Is Amazon all over them? Is there an exclusive arrangement? Something like that, right? And as we're looking through, I don't necessarily see anything that, really looks like a private label product. So you could open up a couple of these. You can see that IP alert is showing up on this, but sometimes it can be kind of older information, right? So it's a good guideline, especially for you new sellers, to be, hey, you be on the lookout for this type of product, but you don't necessarily need to avoid it every time. So you see 3, 2, 1. You can see all these are just kind of making natural organic sales compared to that one where they all fell off a cliff. So in the event that you do actually get an IP complaint, I also want to talk about what to do in those cases. So let's say you go through all those processes, you go through all that checklist we just talked about right there, and you still get an IP complaint. It's okay. It's natural. We still get IP complaints in our business. Sometimes brands just start carrying out of the blue and you're kind of the guinea pig. It's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But when you're selling on Amazon, there's a big misconception, especially with arbitrage, that you can't use like online invoices, that kind of thing, to get those approvals, to get those IP complaints gone. We use those all the time. The main things you're going to want to make sure you're doing on your invoices is to make sure that your address on your Amazon seller account is on the invoices somewhere, right? So typically for us, we're shipping items to our prep center. It's not going to be my business address, but we'll leave the billing address as the business address. So Amazon says, hey, this is legitimate. This person bought, this product from, Target.com. Target.com obviously isn't selling counterfeit products or, something like that. So we can go in there and appeal those complaints with these legitimate invoices. The same thing goes for, inauthenticity, that kind of stuff. You can submit those online invoices and prove that your products are legit. You just need to make sure that your business address and business name is on those invoices somewhere. So then once you have those invoices, you're just going to go into the account health tab, go ahead and appeal that using the invoices, using a POA. If you guys are in the FBA roadmap, there's also a POA template in there, as well as an email you can send to the brand. That's another thing a lot of people don't do, is just simply emailing the brand and saying, hey, we got an IP complaint. We won't sell this product anymore. Can you retract the complaint? And a lot of times they'll say yes. So again, if you guys are in the FBA roadmap, there's that 1-page long IP complaint POA and then another like half-page email template to send out to the brand. That's the exact thing that I use to retract all of our IP complaints. And that comes along with everything else that you get in the FBA roadmap, 18 hours of content, private community, weekly Zoom calls, all that good stuff. So if you guys want to go ahead and check out the roadmap, the link is going to be down below for that if you need kind of guidance with these IP complaints there. But don't let these IP complaints be a limiting belief in your business. You can absolutely power through them using online invoices. It's just a pretty simple process of submitting whatever you have. But I really appreciate you guys watching this video. If you got value out of this video, please feel free to hit that subscribe button down below. That would add a little bit of value back to my business for helping you out. If you guys have any questions, comments, anything like that, feel free to drop those down below as well. But I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and I will see you next time.